Today on the show, I am joined by Jackson Lahmeyer. He is a pastor. He is located out in Oklahoma, both in Oklahoma City and in Tulsa. And he also helped President Trump create the White House Faith Office. Today, we're going to talk about that movement. We're also going to talk about his pastorship in general and get into a little bit of, just a little bit of riffing. Without any further ado, I'm your host, Sal Asante. This is the We the Patriots podcast, and let's get right into it. So, Jackson, I am so happy to be blessed by your presence, I think would be the appropriate verbiage for today. Tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're located at, where you doing your services, and what do you actually do?
Yeah, well, hey, thank you so much for having me on. Always an honor to be with a great patriot like yourself. And I pastor Sheridan Church in Tulsa and Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. So we have two campuses, and been at Sheridan for 8 years now. But it's privileged to serve as the leader of Pastors for Trump, which was the coalition in the 24 campaign to mobilize the evangelical vote. And now I get to be a part of the White House Faith Office and the National Faith Advisory Board. So get to have a little bit of fun. Get to be in religion and politics, the two things that they always say never to talk about, right?
Eh, I don't know. I think that when you look back on the history of our nation, they're so integral and very interrelated. So I don't think that there's any problem at all. But they do say separation of church and state, right?
I
Uh,
love the separation of church and state. I don't want the government telling me what to preach whatsoever.
that of all things to say, that is actually good. However, I'm of the opinion that we should have, I guess, faith. I'll keep it very open ended, but I think that faith should be promoted by our government, our country. I do not think that should be lost. And I do think that it is important to recognize that we are a Christian nation. And I think that kind of has a lot to do with what you're actually doing in a day in, day out basis. So tell me a little bit about what your movement with President Trump and his administration has been, and where does that kind of come into play with the anti-Christian stuff? Because I know you were pretty big on that and talking out on that.
Yeah, well, to your point, what you said earlier, it's very clear. If you go read our founders, even our founding documents, America was formed as a Christian nation with the freedom, not from religion, but the freedom of religion. Just as, nobody should get in the middle between a doctor and their patient. The government should not get in the middle between a person and God. That is not the role of government whatsoever. Government doesn't give us our rights. Government protects our God given rights and secures them. And so that was how our nation was founded. Unfortunately, under Barack Obama, accelerated under Joe Biden, there has been an anti Christian bias within our federal government, particularly the DOJ, FBI, especially the IRS. And so President Trump, kept a campaign promise. He established the White House Faith Office. Now, previous presidents have had faith initiatives. George Bush had one, President Trump had one during his first term, but the White House Faith Office is totally different. It is a standalone office in the West Wing of the White House with a direct report to the commander in chief. Not only that, we have faith directors in every single federal agency. That's the big one. There's a faith director in every single agency. And what we are working on currently is uncovering the anti-Christian bias that has been there, exposing it, and then coming up with solutions how to make sure it never happens again. And so thankfully, President Trump is not one of those guys that makes promises on the campaign trail and then doesn't try to follow through with it. He accomplished this, and it's a big deal. It's a very big deal. It's helping bring America back to its roots, which is a necessary thing. As I've told the president, the phrase that I like to use out on the campaign trail with pastors and evangelicals was, if we're going to make America great again, we first have to make America godly again, because that's what made America great in the first place. And so good things are happening. I don't know if you saw the New York Times came out and published that the IRS has declared that churches can legally endorse candidates from behind the pulpit. Now, this was something we've been told you can't do that. You cannot do that. That's a violation of separation of church and state and all that kind of stuff. And the IRS has declared legally churches can endorse politicians, political candidates from behind the pulpit, and there's no worry about the IRS coming after you, which this is a major blow to our friends on the left because they have tried to utilize, you pastors have to be quiet. I mean, my church, and this is not an exaggeration, my church has been reported thousands of times to the IRS because on the website of the IRS, there's a link where you can report a church for political engagement. And now the IRS has come out and stated very clearly, actually, you churches are good to go.
Interesting. So, how, if you don't mind me asking, how would you differentiate yourself and um, the type of faith that you hold? Obviously, you're a Christian, but what is the difference between that? Like, I myself am a Catholic. So, what is the difference there? And is there much of a difference when it comes down to how we should be seeing the world, especially as Americans?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a firm believer that evangelicals and Catholics have way more in common than what we do that separate us. And yeah, we have some disagreements, and that's fine. However, a Catholic worldview and an evangelical worldview are nearly identical. And so I know there's a lot of people, maybe on the evangelical side, that will say, "Ah, those wicked Catholics." No, our Catholic brothers and sisters, they're totally on our team and we're on their team. And so that's just to get that out. But in regards to the political sphere, listen, freedom of religion allows an individual to practice their faith however they choose to practice their faith. We're not trying to impose a theocracy or that is not our system of government. Our system of government is representative of the people. Now, we do have to recognize the majority of people in the United States of America are still Christian. I know they don't want us to say that, but you can just go look at the numbers and demographics. The largest voting bloc in America is the Christian voting bloc. And that's what put President Trump in the White House in 2024, winning that election. And so we just have to be involved and engaged. And just because we're Christians doesn't mean that we cannot have a voice in the political arena. That's a ludicrous assumption. But those who are anti-Christian, they want to silence us because they know the influence that we have as a collective unit in America. And thankfully, Christians turned out and they voted in 24.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that COVID was a big turning point for, especially in America, at least for younger people, especially coming back to the faith or getting engaged. How did you see that from your side? Obviously, you said you've been at the same place for about 8 years. You were all the way through COVID. Did you see your numbers pick up? Did you see people getting more engaged? How was that out in Oklahoma? It's a little different than New Jersey.
Shocked. I am in Oklahoma, but in Tulsa, we're kind of purple politically.
Sure.
Oklahoma's red, but Tulsa's quasi purple. And I decided that I was going to keep my church open. We developed an idea of doing what was called drive in church. We were the first church in Tulsa that I would stand on the roof, I would preach, people could drive up. Well, the mayor of Tulsa threatened to arrest me over that
Really?
and said, if you do drive in, yeah, because there was a mayoral edict that went out that you couldn't have more than, I think it was 6 people gathered in one location. And obviously, we had a few more than 6 people gathered.
They were doing
And
the
so he
pardon votes and
threatened,
stuff in their own time.
yeah, and he threatened to arrest me over it. Now, we did it. We followed through. He did not follow through. He backed down. And so I got into a little bit of a media fight with the mayor of Tulsa. He threatened to arrest me. I threatened to sue him. And so, the media, those juicy stuff. You got a pastor and a mayor in Tulsa fighting, but we stood up. We fought, and that actually helped our church grow. And it was interesting because when you're kind of like the only one open for business, people will shop there. And so their churches shut down and they started coming to our church simply because we stayed open. And so it's really interesting. You would be surprised at the makeup of Sheridan Church. We have people that are coming from a Catholic background. We have people that are coming from a Baptist, a Pentecostal. We have a very diverse makeup of believers simply because we stayed open. And these were people that, they wanted to go to church in the midst of a chaotic time. It was such chaos early on. But looking back, I'm so glad that we didn't close our doors, that we were creative, stayed open, and I actually really appreciate the mayor of Tulsa threatening to arrest me. It helped us grow.
Yeah, give you a little bit of an injection. It seems like. Yeah, so I mean, I'm very happy with at least people seemingly coming back, and it seems to be something that is not just a one-off or a one-time thing. Excuse me, one moment. Somebody had to use the garage right under. It's pretty typical. So it seems like the people are a little bit more invested than usual. A lot of times you'll see a one-off event or something, catastrophic happens, whether it be a natural disaster or an event like an attack on our country, something like that, and the faith goes crazy or the patriotism goes crazy, and then it dials down quite quickly. Does seem like the numbers are up across the board, and I'm pretty happy about that. I'm sure in your position you are as well. Now, one thing that has this is actually current news, so I'm curious to get your take on it. One thing that's plagued the Catholic Church, especially, has been, and I'm not saying anything that's totally crazy town here, but has been plaguing, especially the priesthood and the papacy for a long time, has been the assertion, I would call it, that there is a lot of pedophilia and whatnot. And so, with the recent story coming out, they're closing the case on Epstein and whatnot. How has that affected you and your parish? Do you have a lot of people that are asking you about that, or asking, to save the children, so to speak? Like, how exactly do you treat that as a pastor?
It's an interesting thing. I'm very good friends with Kash Patel, who is, now the head of the FBI. He's spoken at my church before. And so, I know Cash. I know Cash very well. I trust Cash, to be honest with you. I know him. So it kind of gives you a little different perspective than if you don't know somebody. So knowing him causes me to trust him more so than maybe what I would have if I didn't. So I can't speak to the process that they've gone through in regards to the Epstein case. For me, this is just Jackson Lahmeyer speaking as an American citizen. I don't think the situation is being handled all that well because it is giving so much room for, just ideas, conspiracies, and they may not be conspiracies at all.
Yeah,
And so I think better transparency would help resolve this issue much more quickly than essentially saying, "Hey, the case is closed. We're moving on." I don't think people are just going to say, "Oh, okay, yeah, case is closed. Let's move on." I just cannot foresee that being. Yeah, it's. I mean, if you're on X, you
that's a fact.
cannot you cannot avoid. People are saying, "What in the world?" Because we were told one thing, correct, with that the Epstein files,
Yeah.
client lists, and all that was going to be released. And then you have, say the Attorney General Pam Bondi going on Fox saying, it's on my desk, it's going to be reviewed, and all that stuff. And so I can't give an answer specifically to why it's being handled this way. If they were to
You're just
ask
a
me,
part of the faith office, Jackson.
right, if they were to ask me, I would give them my opinion. They're not asking my opinion on how to handle the Epstein
I hear you.
files. But I just think because of the lack of trust that I would say the majority of Americans have towards FBI, Department of Justice, all those things. I think in the best interest of trying to not cause that lack of trust to accelerate and grow, I just think transparency on this. Listen, if the Epstein files got eradicated and erased, and we don't have just come out and say that, like, hey, they were erased, we don't have them. But just to say, hey, case is closed and that's it. I don't think it serves President Trump well because obviously his job is not to review the Epstein files, and that's the FBI, that's the DOJ. He's put those people in place, and so I think I have a feeling that this issue is not case closed. It may be case closed, like we're not going to do anything more. But I don't think the people who are on our team, these are the loyalists, these are the MAGA base. I don't think they're just going to say, "Oh, okay, let's move on."
Yeah,
I
I think it was a
I don't
pretty
think so.
central issue for a lot of, and I would say not just MAGA, especially for myself, find myself much more towards the middle. I would say, especially past this past month. But that being said, I think Americans in general, the average American cares so much about this issue, and not to linger on it too long, but I think it kind of gets to the core of, if you're willing to just sweep this aside, then maybe you don't agree with the foundational values that make up what this country really is about. Protecting children, protecting the freedoms, and also justice by the way of law, not justice just Wild West style and getting revenge, but seeing someone go to trial that deserves to be on trial and getting their due justice, I think is a very American value. And I see a
Absolutely.
lot of people from every side of the aisle, every side you could think of, especially on X, like you mentioned, coming out of the woodworks, being critical of the decision, I would say, to call it case closed, as you mentioned.
Right.
And I'm very happy with that. Now, to move on that and not just linger on total degeneracy, I was curious, did you, in your time in the establishment of this office that you're now working as a part of, have you worked directly with President Trump?
Oh yeah, it's the honor of a life. I've spent more time at the White House this year than I ever thought I would in my entire life. It's been an incredible thing being with the president. I was just recently with him, and he gave me his presidential coin that I keep with me. It's the neatest. It's quite heavy, and it's the president, so it's done gold and the whole thing, right? And the president has made a decision. He wants faith leaders at the White House. There's no political gain for him in this. He's not up for reelection. He doesn't need the evangelical vote. He doesn't need the Catholic vote. He's in. But he has made the decision as the commander in chief. I want pastors here through the faith office. And so, I've been in the Oval several times, which is a really cool experience for someone who loves history, loves our country, and being there to pray for the president. And that's something at his request. The pastors don't say, hey, we want to go into the Oval and pray for president. That's not how it works. The president says, hey, I want you to come into the Oval Office and pray for me. And so shows you the heart of President Trump. And, I've become very, very close with his two sons, Eric and Don. Both of them have been at my church multiple times. And so, I've got a good relationship with the Trump family. I appreciate all that they have sacrificed for our country and all that they're doing. Now, does that mean that President Trump is a flawless individual? And no, he's a flawed individual just like I am, And
Absolutely.
so, is he perfect? By no stretch of the means, but I think he's the perfect person to be in the position that he is in right now. And so the faith office is an incredible opportunity. What the president has done is he's essentially said, I want to give pastors a seat at the table. And so you see his table, you've got the Secretary of Defense, and you go for it. He's got a table, and those are his counselors. But he has intentionally said, I want pastors at the table as well, which is unprecedented in recent times. Now, this was a normal thing in our founding era, but
Sure.
in recent modern times, no way.
Now, when you think about it, though, that move from Trump or from anybody that would go ahead and do that is actually, you would you would think, if you're going logically based, is actually going to connect with the people more, to have people like yourself or others that are so connected with the everyday individual, everyday
Right.
American, and having their voices echoed in front of the administration, or like you were saying, in every single department. um, I think that's very important, and I actually applaud Trump for that.
Yes.
Now, I am curious. This is a question that just came up to me while I was thinking during the day today of what I wanted to ask. How do you compare yourself? So I don't know the size of your church. I don't know how everything works around you at this point. How would you compare yourself to like some of the mega church pastors, like people like Joel Osteen, or forgive me, the other guy's name that has the wicked face? What is in comparison? Like how many people are you average seeing? Like what does your church look like?
So I don't know if you can hear me. You're kind of freezing and breaking up a little
I
bit
just
on
cracked
my
up a
end.
little bit, but compare yourself to the mega church runners.
Can you hear me okay?
uh,
All right, I can hear you now.
yeah, I can hear you perfectly. My Wi-Fi is just in and out, so
Oh, okay, no worries. I think your
don't worry about
question
that.
was, how do I compare myself to mega church pastors? Was
Yeah,
that
yeah,
okay?
basically.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, friends with many pastors that would be in that category of mega church. And some are amazing, some are not amazing. Just like at smaller churches, there's some great pastors of smaller churches. There's some really bad pastors at smaller churches, and so
I can attest
it's
to
just like in anything, it's there are some good ones, there's some not so good ones, and the only ones that ever get any attention are the not so good ones, and then everyone else gets kind of. It's just like the same thing with the priesthood in the Catholic Church.
that.
I saw some numbers. It's upwards of like 98% of all Catholic priests have never even been accused of sexual impropriety or anything like that. So, what you're talking about is a very, very small number of, say, Catholic priests that have sexually abused children. It's very, very small. However, they're the ones that get the attention because what they've done is so bad. And then you kind of categorize, well, all Catholic priests are child abusers. Well, that's not true. The vast, vast majority of Catholic priests are not, but there are some that are. So it's the same way within megachurch pastor circles. There are some that are very corrupt. It is what it is. Call it what it is.
I can
But
imagine.
the majority are not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense, and I think it correlates with, especially the way that our news cycle runs nowadays. You're really going to focus on the negative,
Oh, yeah.
especially when you're able to make a story out of it, and
What
not
gets the
necessarily
views?
me or you, but the mainstream news is going to blow up anything that'll get their ratings. So that definitely makes sense. When you're running your parish, are people would they consider your parish? Because I don't live in Oklahoma. Would they consider your parish a mega church, or are you just a big evangelical gathering?
Well, they would consider us by numbers a mega church. We have 1,700 members, and so they label us
That's not
that.
outrageous.
It
That's not outrageous.
doesn't mean anything. They try to use it as a negative. They label you
Yeah,
that
of
as a
course.
negative type of thing. And so, we have a great church made up of great people. A great church is not made up just because of a great pastor. A great church is made up of great people. And so we're very fortunate here at Sheridan, very grateful for the team that I get to lead and get to be the shepherd of and steward. And so, it's a negative term. They've taken the term mega church and they have made it as a negative, and in some cases it can be, it can be, but not in all cases. Doesn't mean it's a terribly bad thing all the time.
That's totally fair. I guess the fact that you put a number to it really helps though, because when I think of the term megachurch, I don't think of 1,000, even 2,000, maybe even up to 5,000 people. I think of thousands and thousands of people, possibly filling half an arena at an NBA stadium type of thing, because you see those things every now
Oh,
and
yeah.
then. And not to say, like you were mentioning before, not to say that if you fill out that arena, you're necessarily a bad person as the pastor, but just to say that if you are, running the collections for that size of an operation, there are very good chances that the money could start going to your head.
Of course.
How much liquidity you have in terms of mobilizing your operation, any of those types of things. So, just to end up, I know I don't want to run past our time here, but I'm very curious how you actually came to decide that you wanted to be a pastor? How did you get into this?
Well, it's a story, but I never wanted to. So just to
Okay.
be blatantly clear, I went to Oral Roberts University and I was majoring in business. ORU is a Christian university here in Tulsa, and I was a business major. And I just really sensed God kind of tugging on me that I was called into ministry, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in business. And through many different circumstances and a sort of what you could call a dream, I guess. God spoke to me and was so clear. You know how sometimes it's like, I don't know if that was God. It may have been me.
Oh, absolutely.
There are other times though. You're like, oh, that was definitely God. And so in my case, it was a definitely that is a God thing. And so I became a theology major and went in the ministry, and that calling was on my life, and those gifts and all that were there, and so just being developed. But yeah, it was never something that I sought out to be. I wanted to be a guy. I was a Christian and wanted to own a business. That was what I wanted, to be an entrepreneur. And God had another plan, and very grateful that he revealed it he had to be so clear with me that I couldn't mess it up. I had to be so clear that I couldn't brush it off. And God meets us right where we are. Wherever you're at, God will meet you right where you are and
Sure.
speak to you. And so that was kind of how it came about.
And so as you shifted that, did you ever venture after college, after shifting over to theology, did you ever try to endeavor back into business, or was this something that kind of you took right on?
Well, when I went into the university, I had already owned a business. I had started a lawn care in high school, and then it exploded, and I was hiring my friend.
Two
And
landscapers here.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I already had a business and it had really grown. And so going to ORU, switched from a business major to a theology major, went in the ministry, but own several businesses right now. So I'm a pastor, but I'm also an entrepreneur. So I kind of got my cake and I was able to eat it too, if that makes
Very nice.
sense. So I'm a business owner, but my main focus is like if someone, what do you do? I'm a pastor. That's what I believe God called me to do. The businesses help take care of my family and all that kind of stuff. But so I get to do both, which to me is a win-win.
Now, last question here. I see some sort of jersey in the background. Is it a baseball jersey? Football?
Okay, so I
Basketball?
got
What's your sport?
Daryl Strawberry is he comes and preaches at my church twice a year. So Daryl Strawberry is over here, and then Tim Tebow is on the other side. Tim also comes to my church and speaks as well. And so baseball and football. And then the picture behind me, it's kind of blurred, is Michael Jordan, 1998, Game 6 of the NBA Finals, Utah Jazz taking that last shot.
Very nice. So, okay. So you're into most of the major sports. It
I
sounds
love sports.
okay. I'm a yeah, I'm a big baseball guy myself. I can't let you go too easy now. So Tim Tebow. So I recently heard his interview with Tucker Carlson. I think it was. That was a phenomenal interview. Really kind of, he was always known as the Christian going through college and whatnot, and he was very proud about it, which I do not fault whatsoever. I actually think it's beautiful. But hearing his side of the story and not just have someone else tell it or say it in a negative light, that was extremely eye opening for me. If he comes to you, I'm sure you've heard this story personally. I'm just curious how he is as an individual when you actually get to meet him face to face.
I get asked that all the time because I've gotten to know Tim very well. And, like I said, he comes to the church about twice a year.
Yep,
And people will ask me, is Tim Tebow as nice in person as he seems to be on TV?
for sure.
And my answer is no. He's way nicer in person. Tim is one of the most genuine, nice
Yeah,
human being you'll ever meet. And you talk about a man on a mission right now. And we were talking earlier about saving the children. And Tim Tebow is at the tip of the spear
100.
on doing that right now. And so he's not just somebody who talks a good game. This is a man that has taken the resources that God gave him through football and the platform that God gave him through, Florida and then the NFL. And he has taken that platform, those resources, and totally used them. Not for what a lot of athletes do. A lot of athletes, they squander the platform and the resources. Tim has used it to save thousands. And this is not just like an exaggeration, thousands of children out of human trafficking and sex trafficking. And so Tim Tebow, he's the real deal. I couldn't speak higher of a person.
Yeah, he walks the walk. His again, I couldn't recommend his interview enough for anybody out there who's curious. Not to keep you too much longer, Jackson, but I will have to invite you back because I've loved this conversation.
Absolutely.
But anywhere else, for anybody who would like to find a little bit more information on yourself, do you got a website? You got a handle that you could send them to on X? What do you got?
Yeah. So just Jackson Lahmeyer, and Lahmeyer is Lahmeyer, but jacksonlahmeyer.com and Jackson Lahmeyer on X and all the handles. And since you're a baseball guy, I'm going to send you my book that just came out, Chasing After the Wind, because the forward was written by Daryl Strawberry. I don't know if you can see that or not. So Daryl wrote the forward for me, and a baseball guy. So you text me your address, and I'll send you this, and you'll enjoy what Daryl wrote.
I really appreciate that, Jackson. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will catch up soon.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
Have a good one.
I wanna be something, not nothing. Trapped inside my dream and I'm running away from these demons. But the feeling's so good, I'ma keep dreaming.